Some cases dominate headlines for months, even years. Others, just as troubling, slip quietly into the background. The death of Kelly Lynch, a 23-year-old from Gilford, Armagh, is one of those stories that hasn't received the coverage it deserves. On St. Patrick's weekend in 2024, Kelly's body was found in the Ulster Canal in Monahhan. Garda quickly ruled it a drowning, not suspicious. But the details of the case tell a very different story. Kelly Lynch was a 23-year-old woman from the quiet town of Gilford, Armagh, surrounded by green fields and winding country roads. Those who knew her remember her as gentle and warm, but also private. She didn't like being around death or large gatherings. They made her uneasy. Yet when tragedy struck, she pushed those feelings aside. On Wednesday, March 13th, 2024, Kelly made the journey to Monahhan. Her boyfriend's brother had just passed away, and she wanted to be by his side during one of the most difficult moments of his life. Friends would later say that this was the kind of person Kelly was, selfless, putting others before herself, even when she was uncomfortable. She stayed at her boyfriend's house, surrounded by an atmosphere of mourning and heavy silence, hoping she could offer him and his family some sense of comfort. For the next couple of days, Kelly was mostly with him and his close friends, navigating the sorrow that hung over the family. By Friday, March 15th, Monahhan, like much of Ireland, was preparing for St. Patrick's weekend. While crowds gathered in town to celebrate, Kelly and her boyfriend made plans to go out that night. It wasn't her idea of fun, but she wanted to keep him company. A small gesture to distract him from the pain he was carrying. That night would be Kelly's last. What began as an evening of support and togetherness would, within hours, turn into one of the most haunting mysteries her family and community had ever faced. By Friday night, March 15th, Kelly had already been staying at her boyfriend's house for 2 days. She wanted to be there for him after his brother's passing. That night, the couple went out into town with his friends. The night seemed normal on the surface. They walked around, spent time in town, and were seen together by others. But underneath, tensions existed. Kelly and her boyfriend's relationship was known to have its ups and downs, with arguments often sparked by jealousy and suspicion. As the group made their way back from town in the early hours of Saturday, March 16th, they stopped at a school not far from the bridge, where Kelly would later be found. It's said that an argument happened between Kelly and her boyfriend around this area, with Kelly walking ahead of the group in the direction of his house. What happened next is where the story becomes clouded with inconsistencies. Some of those present claimed an argument never took place, while others later admitted there had been one. Accounts shifted. Some said the group went to a house party after Kelly walked off. Others denied this. The last known sighting of Kelly was around 3 a.m. that morning. There is no CCTV footage proving she walked off alone. No one reported her missing. No alarm was raised with the Gardaí. All day Saturday passed without anyone, not her boyfriend, not his friends, calling her family or the authorities. It wouldn't be until the following morning, more than 30 hours later, that her lifeless body was discovered. But the circumstances of that discovery would only deepen the questions surrounding her death. On the morning of Sunday, March 17th, more than 30 hours after Kelly was last seen alive, the quiet countryside near Monahhan was pierced by shocking news. At approximately 8:30 a.m., Kelly's body was discovered beneath a bridge not far from her boyfriend's home. But the way she was found raised immediate questions. Her boyfriend claimed he only began looking for her that morning after noticing that Kelly's bag was still at his house. He and his cousin set out and went straight to the exact spot where she was lying dead. How could they have known where to look if, as they claimed, there had been no sign of her since the early hours of Saturday morning? Even more troubling is that no one had searched for Kelly on Saturday. Despite her disappearance, despite her being in an unfamiliar town away from home, and despite the freezing conditions that night, neither her boyfriend, his friends, nor anyone else raised an alarm. Her family hadn't been called. The Gardaí weren't contacted. When her body was recovered, those close to Kelly were heartbroken and confused. The lack of urgency in finding her, paired with the conflicting stories from those who were with her last, would become one of the many mysteries surrounding her death. The official version of events claimed that Kelly walked off alone, but there is no CCTV evidence supporting this. And while the group's accounts shifted, arguing one moment, denying it the next, saying they went to a party, then later denying that as well, the truth of what happened in those early hours remains clouded. For Kelly's family, this marked the beginning of a nightmare. But the nightmare was only made worse by what happened next, the investigation itself. When Kelly's body was discovered under the bridge that Sunday morning by her boyfriend and his cousin, the shock rippled quickly through the small community. Questions spread faster than answers. How could she have gone missing for over a day and nobody had raised the alarm? Why did no one search for her on Saturday? And perhaps most unsettling of all, how did her boyfriend and his cousin know to look directly beneath that bridge? The guard arrived on the scene and began their investigation. But from the very beginning, there were troubling gaps. Key steps were delayed or overlooked. For example, there were no immediate attempts to trace her phone or collect location pings from the critical hours before her death. The opportunity to secure CCTV footage from surrounding areas, including the school near the bridge, was also missed or left too late. By the time footage might have been obtained, any evidence it could have provided had been lost. The inconsistencies in the accounts from Kelly's boyfriend and his friends raised even more red flags. Despite all these conflicting statements, the guards' investigation seemed to lack urgency. Kelly's family were left with the agonizing feeling that her death wasn't being treated with the seriousness it deserved. The official narrative suggested she walked off alone, yet no CCTV had confirmed that, and no one saw her alive after around 3 a.m. on Saturday morning. The question remains, if she truly was alone, how did she end up dead beneath a bridge just minutes from her boyfriend's home? When Kelly's body was finally recovered, the condition she was found in raised far more questions than it answered. At first, her death was spoken about as a possible accident, a tragic fall. But the closer her loved ones looked, the more troubling the details became. Kelly bore 93 different injuries that did not align neatly with the suggestion of an accident. Her hands showed signs that she may have fought back. Bruising across her knuckles looked like defensive wounds, the kind someone might receive if they were trying to protect themselves or strike out against an attacker. More unsettling still were the knuckle-shaped marks on her ear, eerily similar to injuries she had sustained 2 years earlier when she had been assaulted by an ex-partner. The resemblance was so close that her family could not ignore the possibility that Kelly had been attacked again. Her clothing also told a story. What she had been wearing that night appeared to have been dragged through dirt. Her socks were filthy, but her shoes, strangely, were almost spotless. To her family, This suggested that something was wrong. If she had been moving through rough ground, her shoes should have carried the same dirt. The only explanation they could see was that the shoes had been removed and later put back on her, leaving behind a chilling suggestion that someone may have interfered with her body. These inconsistencies painted a picture that did not match the neat label of an accident. Instead, they hinted at a darker reality, that Kelly's final moments may have involved a struggle, and that afterwards, someone had tried to cover up what had really happened. In the days following Kelly's death, her family hoped for clarity. They hoped the guard would investigate thoroughly, gather every detail, and bring them answers. Instead, what they encountered was confusion, delays, and a silence that felt unbearable. Basic steps that could have shed light on her final hours were left too late. Phone records and location pings, which might have shown exactly where Kelly had been, weren't gathered promptly. CCTV from nearby streets and buildings, including cameras at the school she was last said to have been seen near, were not collected before they were overwritten. Each lost opportunity felt like a door closing on the truth. The handling of the scene raised alarm. The guard had only closed off the area for a short period before reopening it in time for the St. Patrick's festivities. In doing so, any potential DNA evidence that might have been present could easily have been lost or contaminated. Even more troubling, when looking at the bridge on Google Street View, there are two clear signs stating CCTV in operation, positioned right beside it. Yet, no such footage was ever produced as part of the investigation, leaving yet another crucial gap in the search for answers. For her loved ones, it seemed as though the urgency of Kelly's disappearance had never been taken seriously. Nobody reported her missing on the Saturday, and no official alarm was raised until after she was found, nearly 30 hours later. Even then, the handling of key evidence and timelines gave her family little confidence that justice would be pursued. Her mother and father began to push for answers, speaking out about the contradictions in the stories told that night, the marks on Kelly's body, and the failure of the guard to treat her death as suspicious from the beginning. Their grief was heavy enough, but the sense that they had been left alone to piece together what had happened made it so much worse. The more they looked at the case, the more it seemed that too many questions were being left unanswered. Questions they would not stop asking. On the morning of Sunday, March 17th, Kelly's body was discovered beneath a bridge. It was not passers-by or authorities who found her, but her boyfriend and his cousin. What unsettled her family and many in the community was how directly they went to that exact spot, as if they knew where to look all along. By his own account, the boyfriend claimed he only decided to search for Kelly because her bag was still in his house. But more than 30 hours had passed since she was last seen, and not a single effort to raise the alarm had been made before then. No missing persons report, no search on the Saturday, no phone calls to the guard. And yet, when he finally did look, he and his cousin went straight to the bridge, and there she was. For Kelly's family, this detail was impossible to ignore. Why the bridge? Why that specific location? To them, it seemed far more than coincidence. Combined with the shifting stories about the night she disappeared and the silence throughout Saturday, this discovery only deepened suspicion. The official explanation remained vague, treating the finding as a tragic turn of events. But for those who loved Kelly, it felt like another piece of a puzzle that the guard seemed unwilling to put together. As the days passed after Kelly's death, the accounts of what had happened that night began to unravel. Her boyfriend and his friends gave statements, but none of them seemed to match. At first, it was said that there had been an argument between Kelly and her boyfriend near the school, close to the bridge. Some witnesses suggested she had walked ahead in the direction of his house, upset. Yet later, this version shifted, with some saying no argument ever took place at all. The story seemed to bend and twist depending on who was asked. There was also confusion about what happened after Kelly supposedly walked on alone. One version suggested that the group had gone to a house party, leaving Kelly behind. But later, that claim changed too. They insisted they never went to any party at all. Each inconsistency only raised more suspicion, painting a picture of people who could not agree on the most basic details of the night. To Kelly's family, these contradictions were not small mistakes or lapses of memory. They were red flags. If the people she had been with couldn't even keep their story straight, what were they trying to hide? And why was the guard not pressing harder to uncover the truth behind these shifting accounts? The last confirmed sighting of Kelly was around 3 a.m. on Saturday, March 16th. After that, nothing. No CCTV footage has ever been released to prove she walked off alone. For her loved ones, the lack of clarity was unbearable. It was as if Kelly had simply vanished into the night, only to be found lifeless more than a day later, under circumstances that made less sense the more they were examined. For Kelly's family, life has become a cycle of grief and questions. They are not only mourning the loss of a daughter, a sister, and a friend, they are also carrying the weight of fighting for answers that should have been provided long ago. Every inconsistency in the statements, every delay in the investigation, and every missed opportunity for evidence has left them with a painful truth. They cannot rely on the official story to explain what happened to Kelly. Instead, they have been forced to search themselves, to piece together the fragments left behind. The case remains ongoing, with Kelly's loved ones pushing for a full inquest that they hope will finally bring clarity. They want to know why she wasn't reported missing, why CCTV and phone records weren't secured, why her injuries were overlooked, and why those final hours remained shrouded in silence. For them, the fight is not only about Kelly, it is about ensuring no other family is left in the same darkness. But above all, it is about justice. Justice for a young woman whose life was cut short and whose final moments still cry out for answers. As of the making of this documentary, less than 2 weeks from now, on the 16th of September, Kelly Lynch should have been celebrating her 25th birthday. Instead, her family are left with memories, unanswered questions, and the aching absence of a future she will never get to live. This documentary cannot provide all the answers, but it can shine a light on a case that deserves to be seen, heard, and remembered. To support Kelly's family in their fight for truth, we will be leaving a link in the description to their GoFundMe page, which is helping towards the costs of her inquest.